Hi guys, this is Doug. I'm here with my Honda Shadow VT1100, which I purchased for 800 bucks. And the bike was running great, needed some new tires. I did an oil change on it and actually took off for the desert, about a 4-hour journey through the mountains. And everything was fine except when I came down to the valley floor and was sitting in traffic, and then my red light would turn on, indicating, that it was overheating. And I would keep an eye on it, and it would go out once I started riding. So there was another shadow rider on the trip, and he said, "Oh yeah, mine does that. It's not really serious." But I was keeping an eye on it because I had noticed some coolant in the bed of my truck when I brought this thing home, but I couldn't really find the source of a leakage, and I thought it was just some overflow that had come out. As a result of diagnosing this, I first took the seat off, the tank off, the side shields around the neck of the frame, and I got in and changed the thermostat and the checked all the hoses, and I also checked changed the thermal switch on the radiator, of course, after grounding out the thermal switch wire and making sure that the fan ran, and the fan was good. The thermostat, it turned out, wasn't opening up until about 250 degrees, which is way too hot, and I assumed that the thermal switch was going to be bad as well, because apparently these things fail with age. That brought me to filling it up, and I saw coolant pouring out of the coolant recovery hose, and went to diagnose that, and found that the coolant hose, as it found its way into wound its way in towards the reservoir, which is located right down in here. It's really hard to get at. I had to remove quite a bit of the motorcycle. It was the toolbox, the trim below the toolbox, the faux exhaust pipe cover. That's what allowed me to get in there. And then I was able to look down and see that I could actually reach the fitting for the coolant recovery hose from underneath the motorcycle. And the problem was that the hose had been routed haphazardly around all of that sheet metal, and was being pressed up against the exhaust pipe cover, and it melted, and it finally cracked. And so as my bike was heating up, didn't matter how much coolant was in there, it was going to push it out of that hose. And then when it went to recover coolant from the tank, which was overfilling, it was like completely over flooded with coolant. It was above the max line. And now I know why, because the last owner had the same problem, and his way of trying to fix it was by dumping way too much coolant into the reservoir. But the coolant recovery hose was never able to pick up that coolant because of the hole in it that had melted through. Thanks. I hope this video helps you. Okay, so I found the source of my coolant leak, coolant overheating problem, and here it was. I pulled off the shield to the exhaust pipe, and I found that it was pinching this as well as melting it, because this was tucked in here, which is incorrect, obviously, because it melted. So you have to take your toolbox off, right? And you have to come in here. This was two 10mm bolts. That's more shielding there. And then you can see now your coolant recovery tank is right here, okay? And you think, how in God's name am I going to get that off? And that's why I made this video, because I want to help somebody that's trying to do this. So that's where the bottom of the coolant recovery hose went to. There's the barb, and you can reach this from underneath the motorcycle. Okay, so you have to jack up the bike, or if you're good, you can climb under there and get it. It's just got a spring clip retaining it, and then pop this off, and then you can dig it out of here. It hooks up to this little connector, and then it runs back here to the filler neck of the cooling system, and then behind it you see this silver dome back here. That is your thermostat housing, and in order to get that out, it's really tough. You have to disconnect. I disconnected all of the hoses leading up to it, not at the housing, but where they connected to, because those I could reach. You disconnect one bolt on the right hand side of the bike. That's the only thing that holds the housing to the frame. And then I had to disconnect my radiator and that hose coupling, that hose right there, and then it lifts out with these rubber grommets sit in there. The bottom lifts out and then drops down. And I'll tell you that putting this thermostat was a lot easier going in than it was coming out. But what I recommend is you have a 1/4 inch drive, an 8mm socket on a universal with an extension, and then once you have this thermostat's connective hoses loose, you can sort of pry it forward and you can get your extension or a wrench or whatever over the 2 nuts that hold that housing down. And what I recommend also is go to O'Reilly, or Napa, take your thermostat in there and they can match it for you. Get a 180-degree thermostat, just replace it, don't even bother testing it. This one was old, it was not opening up until it was about 260 degrees. And I also recommend that you replace your thermal switch. Now a lot of people might think about it because it's like $55 or something from Honda, maybe more. But you can get these on Parts Geek or eBay, I think even Amazon. I got this from Amazon Prime for $12 delivered in 2 days, and that's fine. I tested my fan by pulling off that wire and then grounding it to the frame with the key on, of course, and then the fan operated. So I know my fan works. It just has to be properly controlled by that thermal switch, which will now have it turn on around 180 degrees.